All right. Hey, everybody. Ken Gouchi back at you again with the Veterans Angle podcast. So, today I was actually going to do a video on an update from my last one that I did on Mormons because I've still got a lot of stuff that I didn't really clarify in there. It's a lot, and I get that it's a lot, and I would like to remind everybody that I am not here to end anybody's religion. I'm not here to challenge your faith. I'm not here to make you feel stupid. I am simply here to try to make people think outside of the box. If anybody's ever listened to me, I do believe that there will come a time when humans will no longer need religion in order to live good, happy, healthy, productive lives. I truly believe that. I truly believe that we will evolve to a point where our intelligence is high enough where we will not need that fear of God to convince us to do good, positive things. Right. And I think at this point in human existence, humans just aren't capable of that yet. At least not all of us. Some of us understand it just fine, but the majority of people out there are not capable of understanding, that nothing we do has anything to do with God at all, except for our existence. And I'm going to get to this in future episodes. I've been thinking about it for a long time. I've been writing a new book, and I've been thinking about it because I do not want to be the one that starts a new religion, but unfortunately, the information that I have, that's what would happen. Somebody would take it, and somebody would learn. Hey, we can create a following with this ideology, and people can start paying us money and all kinds of shit. And that is the last thing that I want because we already have too much of that, right? We've already got 45,000 variations of Christianity, right? There's numerous variations of Islam, right? You got Shia, Sunni, Kurdish, you got all types of different. Every religion breaks down into basically sub-religions, and I say this all the time. The reason is because humans are competitive by nature, right? And so the two greatest competitive sports ever created are religion and politics. And they play hand in hand off each other, right? You can't really have solid political views without a religious foundation, right? Because religion is what determines, right? That's how societies determine their laws and their their culture in general is through that religious lens, right? And it's all done through moral subjectivity, right? And people get really offended when I say this, but morality is absolutely subjective, right? This is how you got some Catholics that think it's okay to do abortion, and you got other Catholics that don't, and you got some Baptist that thinks it's okay to drink alcohol, and you got right? Morality is subjective. But humans have developed such a competitive, it's like, I'm right, you're wrong. My Jesus is better than your Muhammad. This is what humans have evolved into based off of competition, right? Everybody wants the next best thing. Everybody wants to lead the next strongest group, and that's what religion is. I've said it time and time again. Religion in today's world is necessary. It created a societal norm where people know that they shouldn't be out there killing or raping or robbing or doing some of those serious things. The question of morality starts to play in. It's always a balance. It's always like a scale, right? It's always a balancing act. And this is what I mean when I say, good cannot exist without evil. This is why good and evil, there is no such thing as good or evil. It's simply positive versus negative. Positive energy versus negative energy. And I think what I'm going to do is I think I'm actually going to start making some videos about my actual theology. Some of you people are going to think I'm crazy. Some of you people are going to think that I'm a genius. But again, I have to be very careful about this because I do not want to start another religion. I don't want to do that. My goal is to end religion. My goal is to try to help influence humans to a point where they do not need that fear of God anymore, where they've actually got enough common sense that they can say to themselves, man, we shouldn't murder people because it does bad things for society. Right? We shouldn't be out there raping people because that does bad things for society, right? That turns us into a primitive species where we start survival of the fittest, where we start, kill or be killed. And that is the last thing that I want to have happen. I wouldn't mind it, right? If this world wants to go into straight anarchy, I'm fine with that. But the average person is not going to enjoy that very much, and that's just the bottom line. So today, instead of talking about the Mormons and getting back into that shit, I think I'll probably leave that off for a week or two because I'm still researching some stuff too. But I got into an argument with the guy on YouTube last week about it, and it actually kind of put me into a little bit of a funk, just because it is so difficult for me to understand how some people can be so naive. Right. And here's the thing when it comes, and I say this all the time, every religion can be validated. Right. You can look at archaeological evidence. You can look at ancient texts. You can look at, oh, this person said that Babylon was there, so it must be true. Like, yeah, okay, Babylon still exists to this day. So we know that it was there. But the point is that any single thing that creates a religion can obviously be validated to support that religion, right? It doesn't matter if we're talking about Mormons or Islam or, right, Hindus or any of them. The people who created those religions have enough validation that they were able to convince a whole bunch of people that they're right and everybody else is wrong. That's what religion is. It is a control mechanism. And if you do not understand the purpose of religion, then it is impossible for you to understand anything else about it. This is why there is no one true religion, right? If there was a true religion, then everybody on earth would belong to it because it would be able to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, I can prove my religion. I can actually prove my theory about God, but I won't really get into that right now. Today, what I would actually like to talk about is the story of the serpent. Okay, during Adam and Eve's, I guess you could call it fupa, when they decided to partake of the forbidden fruit, right? The forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge. Now, there are some people out there, I've seen some YouTube videos out there here recently where some people are claiming that the serpent, right, in old belief systems, especially like, mainstream Christianity and probably even a lot of Judaism, but specifically in mainstream Christianity, Christianity is really the only religion that has hell. Right, even the Jews, their definition of hell is much different than like the Jews. Hell, it's like a holding cell, right? I think the maximum time you can be there is like 7 years or something like that. I don't know. They don't believe that hell is an eternal damnation. They just believe that it's a holding tank, kind of like a drunk tank at the county jail, where you go spend some time there, you learn your lesson, and then you go back onto your path. But Christians in particularly, and also keep in mind that the word hell does not exist anywhere in the Bible. Nowhere. Right? The concept of hell, and as everybody knows when I've talked about Constantine and how he created the New Testament based off of, basically he pulled a bunch of Judaism, Gnosticism, paganism, and he just kind of combined it all together and created a religion that would attract everyone. And one of the things was this idea of hell. And so naturally, hell had to be ruled. And here again, this all goes back to Isis and Osiris, where, Isis was the god of the underworld, right? That's really where the idea of hell, actually, the idea that comes from the pagan, the Norse god, Hel, right? Helil. That's hell, the goddess of the underworld. And that's where Christianity got this idea from, the idea that there's a God and then there's a devil, as if they could ever be two different people, right? I mean, I ask the question all the time, how can it be evil if God created it? Furthermore, do you actually think that your God is so weak that first he would create humans in his image, then he would create evils, supposedly to test humans, that he created in his image. So that tells you automatically that God obviously isn't very reliable. If he creates someone in his own image and then he has to test them, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But then on top of that, then you have to believe that somehow this all-powerful God lost control over that evil. So then he had to send himself in the form of Jesus to help save the humans from that same evil that he created. It is truly the dumbest concept that could have ever, but, it's controlled humans for the last, 1700 years, so it obviously was effective, right? And that's what I mean. It has shaped society into what we have now. A lot of it was not friendly. Man, a lot of those Christian, a lot of it was through forced conversion. A lot of it was, basically a lot of different wars and a lot of different fighting. And here again, it was all based off, oh, my God is better than your God. No, my God, Jesus is bigger than your Jesus. That's what it's all based off of. It's that natural human competition, right? And religion is nothing more than a fraternity. That is what it is. It's just a larger fraternity, right? And so you have your membership, you have your hardcore base that is right there with you, and then you have your fringe elements that don't really believe in it, but they belong to the fraternity for that social support, right? They belong to that fraternity because they need that protection. They like that safety net of having like-minded people in their corner. Right here again, humans are tribal by design. We are pack animals. That means that we are social creatures. We form together in packs. Right? This is our family and our tribes, and then our fraternities, and then our religions, and then our governments. Right? It's like the Russian doll. Where you go from the larger or the smaller to the larger. Right? That's what religion is. It's just another step above a fraternity. And this is why people belong to them, is because they enjoy that security, because there is power in numbers, right? But somewhere down the line, people started getting it a little bit too far out of control. And somewhere down the line, humans developed this belief that somehow our purpose is to spend a few years here on earth killing each other just to go up and magically float around with God for the rest of eternity. And I ask people all the time, why would God create humans for that purpose? Okay, why would he create humans just to come down here and be some dipshits for a few little short years, and then just go back up and magically float around next to God doing nothing? Okay, so I'm saying Christianity in particular is the biggest participation trophy religion ever created. You don't have to do anything. All you got to do is say a couple of words and you're saved, right? So of course, the people that have been bamboozled into believing in this stuff, they're never going to be willing to admit that they were wrong. But I still believe that religion is a necessary function in today's world, because I do not believe that humans are smart enough to understand the entire concept of all of it. But I digress. Today, I would like to talk about the serpent. Now, like I was saying, there are a lot of people on the internet. There's this whole thing going around where the serpent, originally it's always been Lucifer, right? That's always been, every church in the existence of Christianity has taught that the serpent was Lucifer, right? It was the devil. Even though technically the devil and Lucifer are technically two different people, but I won't get into that today either. So there's people out there that are claiming that the serpent might have actually been Jesus. Now, this cracks me up from a Masonic perspective, from a Freemasonry perspective. I was kind of telling everybody last time, one of my favorite books in the world is this book right here, right? Morals and Dogma from Albert Pike. And a lot of people, the whole bad thing was that he talked about Lucifer, Luciferianism, But there have been plenty of scholars throughout history that have made similar comparisons between Lucifer and Jesus, right? The morning star. That's how the Bible describes Jesus, as the morning star. And as we know, Lucifer was also the morning star. And if you look at the original story of Lucifer, he was God's chosen son, right? He was God's favorite. He was God's number one. So if God was going to send anybody down to earth to, I guess, manage its production, he would probably be the one that would be able to do it. But let me throw a different theory out to some of you biblical people out there that don't even understand the whole context of any of these stories. So the story of Adam and Eve, right? And here again, it has been highly edited throughout Christianity, right? If you look at ancient Judaism, or if you look at even some Sumerian stuff, none of them ever claimed that it was just Adam and Eve. In fact, most of them believed that it was Adam, Lilith, and Eve. And even science kind of backs this up, that humans did not just come from two individual humans. We probably came from at least 3 or 4. Which means that, the first intelligent humans were polygynous, right? They had one alpha male, which was Adam, and then they had multiple females, and this is how they produced so many lives. Now, I'll get into my belief about Adam and Eve on a different episode someday. It's very interesting how the Bible describes, so 2 perfectly formed adult humans just show up in the middle of Mesopotamia, right, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers meet. And these 2 perfect people just go ahead and start reproducing and create the entire world. But my theory is, and listen, I heard this story, I heard this about 20 years ago. I was, me and a buddy, we had a group of guys that were doing a Boston butt sale, so we were roasting pig butts, right? We had these huge smokers, and we were, we had like 400 Boston butts that we were smoking so that we could sell them in a sale to raise money, right? It was part of our, we were trying to raise money. So anyway, me and a buddy decided to pull night guard on the smokers that were outside of our building. And so we sat there all night. And, obviously, I spent 10 years in the Army, so this was kind of a common thing where, like on guard duty or whatever, you're just shooting the shit with your buddy, right? Trying to stay awake, basically. Telling stories, comparing ideas, doing this and doing that. And this dude told me something that it was so profound that I've never been able to forget about it to this day. And he told me, and I want everybody to just think about this, okay? Think about this. The story of the forbidden fruit, the Garden of Eden, the forbidden fruit, the tree of knowledge, that is nothing more than an allegorical representation of when humans developed guilt, right? This is what gave us the ability to determine good versus evil, or right versus wrong. It was guilt. Right? That is an evolutionary point in human existence where humans finally got smart enough, right, to say, wait a minute. Because before this, you got to understand, even the Bible admits that humans were created as atheists, right? Religion did not exist for Adam and Eve. And so therefore, they had no concept of good versus evil or right versus wrong. It was kill or be killed. Right before that, we were literally just a bunch of monkeys running around the woods, and there was no such thing as sin. It was just straight survival. right? So if you killed a brother or if you killed a neighbor, it was just part of the animal kingdom, because there was a point where humans were no different than any other animal out there, right? Is a tiger going to go to hell for killing another tiger? No, because tigers are natural predators. They're territorial, and they're going to fight each other when they cross paths. It's just their biological design, and God designed them that way for a reason. Humans were no different. Okay, so the book of knowledge, right, that knowledge, the fruit, right, the knowledge was nothing more than the human's intellectual ability to determine positive versus negative, right? It took a group of humans to say, wait a minute, man, when you kill that tribe, people are going to retaliate, and they're going to come and try to kill us. Okay, so humans eventually started developing this intelligence level that said, wait a minute, how can we convince everybody else to stop killing each other? Because, man, we're tired of having to survive for our lives when we know that humans are smart enough. But how can we convince them? How can we show them that if they do this, they're going to be punished by somebody bigger than us? That is where the idea of hell comes from. And again, the entire story of the serpent is nothing more than an allegorical representation of when humans developed guilt. Now, forget about the serpent being Lucifer, or forget about it being Jesus, because I personally don't believe any of that. Let me run this by you. What if the serpent was Lilith herself? What if? And what if the serpent, we've all heard of the snake in the grass, right? That's what everyone calls their exes, right? That my ex-wife is definitely a snake in the grass. Okay, but anyway, here's the theory. And again, I was told this story about 20 years ago, and I've just been trying to kind of piece it together ever since. There are some people out there who think that Cain was born from Lilith. Hence the reason he was genetically dispositioned to be more evil, right? Or to be more negative. Whereas Abel was born from Eve, which gave him a genetic disposition to be pure and to be good, right? It's literally just a difference in personalities, right? And if you look at it, so the story went that Adam noticed that Cain was growing up to have this negative, this evil disposition. And this is what made him fall out of love with Lilith. So he kicked Lilith out of the garden, and she had to go and raise Cain by herself in the wilds, with the wolves and the lions and everything else. She had to fend for herself. And this really, really, really pissed her off, man. She got really angry. And so when Adam starts bringing this new hottie around, right, her name's Eve, right, and here again, I could get into the whole theory of how humans started and all this and that, but that's not the point of today's video. Today's point is literally just to try to get people to think out of the box. So the story goes that Lilith found the tree of knowledge, knowing that it would hurt Adam and Eve. Knowing that if they developed this intelligence of good versus evil, that it would shape the entire rest of the world for the rest of humanity, because that would begin religion. That would begin a religious control system where humans were afraid of doing negative things because of the fear of punishment from God. Okay? Now, the story goes, Lilith disguised herself as a serpent to convince Eve that she was actual wisdom, because in those days, snakes were thought to have been the, like magical type of thing, right? This is where we get dragons and all kinds of other things from, right? The serpent is literally a representation of knowledge. That's all it is. It's a gateway. But nonetheless, how do we know that the serpent wasn't just some pissed off ex-wife, right? A snake in the grass, as you will, who convinced Eve to do this and to, persuade her. We all know about the power of pussy, right? We all know that it's not very difficult for a woman to persuade a man to do anything. What she's going to do is say, I'll give you a blowy afterwards, right? And I can guarantee Adam was like, "Ah," right? Because that's how human nature works. And I'm actually not even joking about it. I'm trying to kind of be funny, but I'm really not joking about it, right? If you look at it from an allegorical perspective, here again, knowing that the entire thing is just an evolutionary point in human existence where we develop these these intelligence abilities to determine guilt and fear and all these other types of things, right? And that, to me, is what the story represents. To me, nothing else really matters. I don't care who the serpent was. I don't care who Adam and Eve were. Okay, to me, the only importance of the story is that evolutionary point where right? This is the point where the Bible admits that humans developed religion. Prior to that, humans were atheists. Humans didn't know what God was because we hadn't invented it yet. Right? And that's all that religion is. It's one guy saying, oh, my God is better than your God. Come join me and you'll be safer. It's like, well, okay. This is why there is no one religion on earth that is truly true. Otherwise, everybody would belong to that one religion. And this is the thing. Catholics say, I'm 100% right. Islam says, no, it's me. Hell, Jews have been able to convince the entire world that they are God's chosen people for 2,000 years. That's not a light feature there. That's not a light feat. Right? That takes a little bit of intelligence to convince other humans that you are literally God's chosen people. And it takes a special type of naivety to believe that. Okay? But this is how humans operate, right? A lot of humans are emotional creatures, especially women, right? And so women, they feed off of fear. And women especially are constantly looking for a protective system. That's how their brains are biologically hardwired. It's a survival tactic, right? And of course, men will always go along with women and protect them because, again, the power of pussy is a significant force in this world. This is why we say women can get anything, right? Women women sleep with who they want to sleep with. Men sleep with who they can sleep with. That's the difference, right? But nonetheless, this is really just kind of I really want this to be a shorter episode too, because man, I'm kind of tired of going as far in as I have been lately. Man, this is just exhausting. It is so exhausting trying to argue with people, and it's like, man, I don't want to argue with any of you. Okay, I don't care what you think, just like I don't care if you care what I think. Okay, I am simply putting out just different things to try to get people to think. I'm going to kind of leave it at that. I'll tell you all this. I'll tell you all something. If any of you decide to continue threatening me and threatening my life and my family, I'm going to come for you, man. I'm telling you. Y'all need to fucking stop. Seriously. But if you all want a war, I'll give it to you. If you all want a war, I'm telling you now, I will give it to you. I would really like people to start thinking about this kind of stuff. Just because you've heard one story does not make it true. Okay, there are other ways to think about things. There are other things that you can conclude by hearing the same story. You can hear multiple stories and piece it together. Figure out your truth. I don't believe that the serpent, okay, first of all, I don't believe that there ever was a serpent, right? But if there was, I don't believe that it was Satan or Jesus, and it probably wasn't Lilith either. Okay, people saw some funny shit back then. You guys do know that there's actually scientific evidence that shows that monkeys actually started developing into Homo sapiens with intelligence based off of mushrooms, right? There's actually a scientific theory out there that says we developed our intelligence from a primitive primate stage by eating magic mushrooms. So the thought that people were hallucinating and envisioning some pretty crazy shit is not out of the realm of possibility. People needed to create systems to control their other humans and themselves to give them a more peaceful way of living. That is all that religion is. That's all it is. None of it is true. Now, like I said, in future episodes, I actually am going to start telling my story of God and human creation and all this stuff. I'm afraid of doing this. I am writing a book about it. Call it what you will, a new Bible, if you will. I've been working on this book for about 2 years, and there's still a few things that I need to piece together that is prohibiting me from completing it. But again, my fear is that people are going to take this and create religions out of it to still control other humans. My goal is to get humans to where they don't need to be controlled anymore, right? My goal is to get humans to an evolutionary point where they develop enough intelligence to understand how to live good, happy, productive, harmonic lives peacefully without that fear of God. It's pretty sad to me that you got to have a threat of going to hell in order to live a good, positive life. It's astounding to me. It's astounding that there are actually humans that are still basically monkeys that don't have enough intelligence to think for themselves. But I digress. I really, this whole serpent thing, though, it's always been something that's kind of been at the back of my mind. Is it's just I don't understand. Well, I do get it because I already explained it, but I don't understand how people can take one version of the story that's so much newer than older versions. Again, like the Sumerians and the Jews, man, they all believed in Lilith, but somehow Christians re-edited the story and kind of redid it in their own type of belief system. And it's just like, man, how can you take a religion that's like 7,000 8,000 years old and laugh at it as it being false, but then you're going to take one that's 1,700 years old and be like, oh, that's the truth. Man, people are naive, but I digress. There's a lot of stuff that can be kind of redetermined. Every Bible story to me is just allegorical. It's just an allegorical representation of some evolutionary point in human society. That's all the Bible is. Basic instructions before leaving Earth. Right? That's the Bible. That's all it is. All the Bible is a sociological compilation of things that humans discovered along the way, right? And it's told through an allegorical, right? It's kind of like me giving motivational speeches, right? When I do my masculinity talks, right? I give these motivational speeches, and I rile people up, and I hype them up, and I tell them exactly what they want to hear in a way that still gets my point across too. And that's all the Bible is it's a story of different developmental things, right? I mean, first, again, the Garden of Eden, the story of the forbidden fruit. That is nothing more than an allegorical representation of when humans developed guilt. This is when religion started. This is when the fear of God. This is when, we even something as simple as not eating pork. Right? This is something that's been ingrained. There's entire religions, Jews, right? Islam, they still to this day believe that it is a sin to eat pork. They don't know that that shit was added into religious texts. It was turned into a commandment from God because about 7,500 years ago, people were dying from eating raw pig meat. And pigs, it's such a plentiful animal. They're all over the place. Right? They reproduce faster than just about any other animal out there. So it's easily accessible meat. But people were dying from eating raw pork meat. I can't remember what it's called. It's that what is it? The vitamin deficiency, or what is it? Anyway, people were literally dying from eating raw pork meat or undercooked pork meat even. Right? We know today that pork and poultry and other things, there are certain types of meat that if you eat them undercooked, they can make you very, very sick and possibly kill you. But in those days, people hadn't developed enough intelligence. So the only way they could be convinced not to do it was by making it sound like it was a sin and that God would punish you for doing it. So this way, when people started dying, the smart priest said, "Oh, see, you pissed off God. That's why you died. You pissed off God, man. Good job. You ate the meat that God told you not to eat. Now you're dead." Sooner or later, it caught on, and everybody started saying, "Oh, I better not eat pork, or else I'm going to go to hell." Right? The trend still exists to this day, but it can be directly traced, right? We've got Egyptian hieroglyphs, or maybe it's not even Egyptian, maybe it's Sumerian. They've got Sumerian, I think it is Sumerian hieroglyphs that depict pigs as being evil animals because they fucking kill you. So, not only that, there's another thing that people don't take into consideration, and that's the fact that wild boars used to be incredibly big and mean and very deadly to humans. To this day, you can go to places like the Taunus Mountains in Germany. I hunted a 1,200-pound Kyler boar in Wiesbaden, Germany when I lived there. I was with a Jägermeister, so I didn't have a gun. He was the only one who was legally authorized to have a gun. But this pig kept tearing up our damn golf course. So me and this Jägermeister went out there and we hunted this damn thing. Took us 2 weeks. 1,200 pound. It was like I want to say it was like 600 kilograms. This fucking pig. This thing was bigger than a cow. The Jägermeister, he had a I don't know what the German weapon was. This is the equivalent to a 30-06, and he had to plug that pig 3 times to get that thing down. There's stories in Germany, right? Like everybody knows, like the Grimm brothers and Hansel and Gretel and all that shit. But there's actually stories from Europe, even Eastern Europe, like the Ukraine and Russia and all that shit, Romania especially, where their pigs were so big that they would take on, like wolf packs and shit like that and kill them all. That's how big and mean wild pigs were back then. So naturally, humans came up with an idea to keep people away from it. They didn't want them to die by eating. Again, pig meat was so readily available, anybody and their brother could eat it. But they said, look, man, if you eat it, you're going to die because God's going to be pissed off at you. No, they died because they ate raw pig meat. But that's the point. This is how religion is formed. These are the things. This is what religion is. It is a control mechanism so that people will do the things that benefit society the most. Right? Healthier living, more laws, right? More control. That keeps society safe. That keeps this alpha male over here from going over to this alpha male and killing him because he wants his land. Right? That's what that prevents. And that's all it prevents. Without that, we would be a bunch of monkeys still running around the woods, killing each other. But it wouldn't be against God because that is just simply how God created all living things. All living things are designed to compete. Right? Even the smallest weed competes with the weed next to it to grow bigger and stronger. And I'm going to get into the reasons why God created us this way. But again, I just have to come up with a better message and see if I can do it in a way where people don't use it for bad, because that is the last thing that I want to have happen. But anyway, I hope this made some of you think. And like I said, I'm going to do another update on the whole Mormon thing. I've got some other interesting stuff coming up. I'm going to, not everything that I do is talking about Freemasonry or politics or any of that shit. I've actually got a lot of other stuff that I would like to talk about. But as we continue on, I'm going to try to build this podcast back up. For all of you who know, I kind of had to start over from the beginning, and we went kind of through a phase where I had different co-hosts and we did all this other stuff. I had different podcast names. But I'm really going to try to build this one back up. Last time, before YouTube banned me, the last time I had about 20,000 followers, 22,000, I think. And then YouTube banned me, and that just all went to shit. But, for anybody who is tired of YouTube, you really should go over to Rumble, because Rumble is really the better platform. They don't censor us. They don't cut us off. They don't defund us. They don't do any of that over at Rumble. And I'm telling you, YouTube needs to just disappear, man. You go woke, you're going to go broke. And YouTube needs to just go away. But I'm going to continue posting these videos on YouTube just because that's the only link that I can use on my website. If anybody ever goes to my website, veteransangle.com, they can see that I post my videos, my newest episodes on the front page every single week or whenever I put them out. And I'm going to continue doing that, but for some reason my website platform won't allow any other encryption sources, so YouTube is the only one that they'll accept. So that is literally the only reason why I'm even still on YouTube. But other than that, man, I don't trust them. And I wouldn't trust them if I was y'all either. But anyway, let me know your thoughts on this. What if the serpent was just Lilith? Just the old ex-snake in the grass, right? Pissing some people off, doing their little games. All right, what if? What if none of it is real? What if it's all just a story? Here again, an allegorical representation, just like the rest of the Bible. All right, guys. I appreciate you all watching. Y'all take care.